Okay, now we have streaming. I should have streaming. There's something here, and I believe it's streaming. If you are tuning in to the replay, you can fast forward about 15 minutes for the actual start. This is the 15-minute pre-show where I try to get my act together, check cameras, audio, those types of things. And yes, I know I could do this offline and you wouldn't see any of it. What fun is that, really? Okay, let's listen in and see just how things are coming across on the live stream, on the stream that is live. Let's see. If you are tuning in to the replay, you can fast forward about 15 minutes for the actual start. See, that sounds fine. That sounds just fine. Well, now, let's see if I can get my act together. Let's change the information on the banner of the website. If I can find that. Here it is. Then we'll go through some of those other things. Content, text. Change this to my live network study group is right now. Click here to join. And let's make it the live link instead of the calendar link. Click here to join us. How about that? Save that custom text and empty the caches so that everybody will see it. And away that goes. In 5 minutes till, I'll get the blast on Twitter and Facebook and Google+. Let's get things going on Socrative. Let's start a quiz, the Network Plus study group. It'll be teacher paced. No, I want student feedback. Changing from classical trumpet. I'm pretty happy about my trombone, but I never got farther than first year of high school. Although piano worked out pretty well. Can meet chicks when you play at a wedding. And when you're going out to meet chicks, it turns out exactly the way you might expect, which is you don't actually meet anybody. You have to set your goals a little bit differently. All right. If you're on Socrative now, you should see something pop up. Let's see if we do. Oh, I have to put in my name. Messer, comma, not all caps, Professor. And let's see if it does pop up. So let's do a check of cameras. Here's camera 1. Hello, camera 1. Camera 2, which I call the bird cam. This is camera 3, which is my desktop in front of me. And that looks pretty good. Looks like I'm getting the right resolution there. Camera 4, which is over streaming everything. This is the one the presentation will actually be on. Let's see how that looks with the presentation actually running. That's what it looks like. Ooh, pretty. Let's see if the picture in a picture, there's one and kind of off over here for some reason. Is that me? Is that a thing? Do I need to move my camera? I think I need to move my camera. There was a lot of movement today or this week with camera. How does it look on camera 1? Yeah, it's a little bit, that one's not bad. This one is the one I just don't like. It's kind of stuck off to the side. That's all right. It's not a deal breaker. If I could see a little bit better, I'm going to change things on my screen so I can see it a little bit better. On my screen, I have a matrix switch, so I can pretty much put any video anywhere. So I can take any input and send it to any output. Looks like this. In fact, I could put my little picture in it. So there we go. Any input to any output. So I can pick this huge monster sized screen that's in front of me. You can kind of see the bottom of it here. And it normally has the control panel for my video switcher. But I need to, sometimes I like to be able to take the output from my TriCaster and send it up there so that I can see the picture in a picture a lot better. I can't see these tiny little screens that are in front of me. That's not too bad. It's not worth me getting up and changing the camera at this point. So that's how that goes. Okay, that's good. All right. So let's do this. So that's good. The camera, things were completely moved around in here this week. I did a computer build. You probably can't even see it. It's kind of behind the microphone to the left of the screen. Do I even have a light I can put on it? I don't think my phone's going to be bright enough to, that kind of helps a little bit. It's hard to tell if you can even see it because my screen is so little. There is a computer back there. So we did a build this week and I recorded the entire thing. I haven't edited anything yet, but I will be doing that this week. And Google Calendar sent me a nice note saying, hey, don't you have something to do in 15 minutes? Why, yes, I do, Google Calendar. When did I set this? I set it for 10 minutes. Let's get the remotes going. That looks good. I need to log in over here. This is probably logged out already. It has. Let's see what we got going on. So this is good. If you're watching this live on YouTube, you can go to ProfessorMesser.com. I'm watching the chat that is at the bottom of the page there. So that will help you, since I can see people in the chat and doing that. Helps if I can actually see what you're trying to say. All right, Live Labs is working. Make sure we've got a study guide for people to see. That looks good. And Socrative is working. So, and some of you are even answering in Socrative. You can see it there over my shoulder. Oh, I need to take my lozenge. My vocal zone. See if I can get this going. Socrative is what we will be doing all of these things in. So if you wanted to get this ready now, you could do something like this. There, we'll be talking about this in a bit. So all I have to really do is move over a little bit, and I'm kind of centered a little better. There is this Socrative. If you've not used Socrative before, you can go to the Socrative website at Socrative.com. Go to the Professor Messer room. Make sure you spell it right. Or you can pull down the app from the App Store, from Google Play, from the Microsoft Windows Store, and put it on your mobile device. And then as I go through questions today, they'll pop up automatically on your screen, and you can answer them and see what everybody else answers, because I'll be sharing that with the rest of the class. Of course, now that I've gone through all this, I have a hair somewhere on my face. It's bothering me. It won't go away. Which is exactly what you want if you're planning to do a live stream. Is have just something weird happening on your face. Try not to do too much of that. There we go. Fix some of these things up. Graphic is in place. Probably don't even need the splash screen there. All right. This is all working. Well, you would think that some background noise, a little bit of music would be a nice thing. Unfortunately, there is some significant copyright restrictions, not just in the United States, because I can take material that I have licensed and play it, but unfortunately, other countries, if there is any music at all in a YouTube video, they will block it. So I don't put any music at all in any of my videos for that very reason. Because ultimately, It's not like the music is something I need. I don't need something interstitial. I don't need just something in the background. It's not part of what I do necessarily. I used to have music, intro and outro, and I don't any longer. And it's because of that. All right, 4 minutes, Mr. Sinatra. We'll get started. Audio sounds okay. I had made some audio changes, and then we lost power because of a storm. For hours, I lost power this week. And, of course, did not change any of my audio settings. So I had to kind of rebuild the mixer. But sounds okay. I'm going to do more testing with that as I have time. I'm going to go ahead and start recording now so I don't forget later. I cannot use royalty-free music. I can't use music that I have licensed. I can't use music that I have legitimately purchased and licensed for that very reason. It doesn't matter if some of these countries, and I'm looking at you, Germany, there's music in the YouTube video, it will block them regardless. So unfortunately, that is where we are with that. It is frustrating because I did go through the process, purchased music, completely legitimate. Everything I make with the videos, the graphics, the content, it's all either been licensed or I've taken my own pictures. I spend a lot of money just to make sure I don't step on anybody's copyright toes. And then even then, I get emails from people, hey, I'm in Germany and I can't watch any of your videos. I'm at an Air Force base in Germany and we're watching your videos and they're all blocked because we're in Germany. So there you go. It's kind of a bummer. Two minutes away. Trying desperately to get rid of this vocal zone and not having much success. Yeah, the Live A+ study group was last week. I do one a month. You can check the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar to get all of the latest. All right, 1 minute. Now I'm looking for something because I'm not going to be able to get rid of this vocal zone in time. Do I have something I can put this in? Yes, I do. Isn't this entertaining? Yeah, I'd like to do more than just those. Need to get my act together. All right. I should probably work on getting my act together here as well. And we will get things started here. I think. No, we will. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2015 Network Plus Study Group. This is our live get-together where we talk about all things Network Plus. I ask you questions, you try to answer the questions, and let's see if you get them right. During this first hour, we'll be doing this live interactive Q&A, and during the second hour, I take phone calls. We'll open up the studio lines. If you're watching this live, you can call in by looking at those phone numbers that's on professormesser.com/live. There's also a 24/7 chat room there. I'm watching the chat room as it scrolls along as well. So that way we can keep in touch with each other here as we go along with this couple of hours of sitting here and talking about technology, finding out some things that how much we know about Network Plus. I've tried to put together a number of different Network Plus things, and I'm able to do this because of your support. You're not only watching all of my live videos, which are available, or all of my videos, my training videos, which are available to watch all online, absolutely free. You can go out there and watch every single minute of every single training video. But some of you like to be able to take it offline. You want to be able to grab those videos and when you're not on the internet, still have access, or you want MP3 files, or you'd like the PDFs of the slides. All of those things are available for a cost, a small stipend. You can find out more at professormesser.com/getnetplus. Of course, I try to keep track of, keep everybody updated on what's going on, so you can keep track of what's happening out on Twitter. That's on professormesser.com/Twitter. My YouTube channel is getting extremely popular lately, and we are so close. We have 99,000 subscribers to YouTube. I would love to get to that 100,000 mark, and it's remarkable how much notice YouTube and Google pay to these types of things. Even if you weren't going to buy anything, it would be great if you could go out to YouTube and subscribe to my channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. And I also want to remind you that I have 10% off vouchers linked on my site over to GTS Learning. You can use their voucher code to get 10% off if you're taking a CompTIA class. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Okay. Let's talk about what we're going to do today, though. I'm going to ask you questions, and you're going to answer questions. And the way you do that online is through this technology called Socrative. So if you go to Socrative.com, you can answer those. You go to the room name Professor Messer, and you can, of course, go out and put that on your mobile device. What good would it be if you didn't have a mobile device to put that on and have the Socrative app on your device? I think I have mine here as well. Make sure that you download the Socrative Student app to be able to do that, and then you'll be able to follow along on your phone. I want to put my name in and follow along on mine as well. So we'll see how that goes. I'll join the room, and that way we can watch and follow along and be able to see exactly what's going on with these. And if you do that right now, you'll even see that there is a message up right now, a question up that I have for you. And the question is, how long have you been studying for your Network Plus certification? And you'll be able to pop open a new window and answer that, or you may do it in your mobile device. And I put up the answers so that you could see what those are. It looks something like this on my side. Is it less than 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, 9 months to a year, over a year, or maybe you already have your Network Plus certification and you're following along here so that you can get maybe continuing education credits, or maybe just like hanging out, talking about networking, which is fine too. And of course, phone lines are open. We can talk about anything during the second half of the show. If you call into that line now, you'll find that that line is a voicemail. So I haven't actually turned on those calls yet, but we'll get to that in that second hour. Stand by or hang on for that if you're here and watching this live. So right now we've got a lot of people in the Socrative, and I think the numbers on Socrative are swapped around. I think they need to fix this. There's 32 students, and I think 29 have answered. Sometimes it switches itself around. Less than 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, 9 months to a year, over a year, or you already have your Network Plus certification. And 57% of you that have answered so far have said, yeah, we've got a lot going on here, and we've been doing this less than 3 months. There is quite a bit that you can learn with Network Plus. And I think here we are at the very beginnings of a semester. Usually we start in January. So maybe a lot of you are in network classes and you're trying to get your Network Plus certification. This is a great way to see how much you know about Network Plus. There's been a lot going on with Network Plus in the last month. If you were on the live stream last month, I told you that you could go to Google and find the new exam objectives, even though CompTIA had not officially added them to the website. Well, since then, they've said, oh, yes, we have now added them to the website. You can go to professormesser.com/objectives, and you can download the brand new objectives for the N10006. And they have stated that the N10006 is available starting today, the 28th of February. So now we begin this brand new chapter with Network Plus, but they also said that the N10005 doesn't go away yet. You still have 6 months before that exam disappears. So we are in this period, this transition period right now, where you could take either of these exams. And this is important. If you've been studying since January for the N10005, and then all of a sudden things just change completely, you don't want to have to restart the process. Instead, you can continue with your studies and study the N10005 content all the way through August the 31st. That's 6 months from now. So when you're thinking about which one to take, you get exactly the same certification, whether you pass the N10005 or whether you pass the N10006. I generally recommend that you take the latest version unless you've already been studying for the older version. And if you are doing that, you can take the 005, pass that, get your certification, and just like the 006, it's good for 3 years. So it doesn't matter which one, you just need to pick one to be able to do that. This is one of these things that constantly happens about every 3 years. They update the certification. There are some changes on the exam. There's a real change in focus on the exam, it seems. Obviously, all the same networking information is there. One advantage I think that the Network Plus has over the A+ certification, for example, is that with computer technology on the personal computer, on the desktop, on the laptop, those technologies change quite a bit in a year. But with networking, Ethernet, gig Ethernet, it's pretty much exactly the same as gig Ethernet was 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. So this is one of the things when we are working with these technologies is that once they're out, they don't change. What they did on this exam is add a lot more security. And I say a lot more. They added quite a bit of security to the 005. They added more security to the 006. Pretty much everything else is right in line with what we had worked with on the 005. So if you are looking to transition from the 5 to the 6, there won't be much of a difference for you. This is one of the advantages, as I say, with Network Plus, is that we don't have to worry too much about that. It's one of those that when we do make changes, they're going to be relatively small. In the chat room, somebody's mentioning the JK0 series. There's another set of terms of numbering schemes that CompTIA uses for the 005, 006 Network Plus. And the one that they're using that is the one everybody has access to is the 005. But if you are somebody who is a student and you're going to an organization that is partnered with CompTIA, you also have, and we call these CompTIA Academy partners, you have other options available as well. There's a different number associated with it. And if you look, the 005 was called JK0019 and JK0023. So you would have to be in a class, or you would have to be someone who is attending or working with a CompTIA Academy partner. It's a different numbering scheme, but it's exactly the same exam. So there's no difference in the exam. I think it's really more of an administrative back-end thing for CompTIA to be able to do this. And the pricing is different as well. I think you get a better price if you're on taking the exam, if you're a CompTIA Academy partner student or somebody working with those. So that's where those are coming from. So that's exciting. We've got a new Network Plus. I've already got all of my new Network Plus video content created. I'm currently working on the brand new Network Plus course notes, and they should be available in the next week or so. And then I'll be shooting video and posting those. So there'll be an entirely new Network Plus course that will be out and available, and I'll have all those videos, and I'll just put them online as I finish them. So you'll see them added to my YouTube page. Another good reason to subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you'll see that every time I put something out there, you'll get a notice that there's new videos out on YouTube. Let's answer some questions. I have questions for you today. So I'm going to go to my Socrative on my screen, and I'm going to go to the next question and see how we do. And so here is the question I have for you. No answering in the chat room. This is something we will talk about the answer as soon as we're done. But the question is, in which of these cases would you be most likely to use WPA2 Enterprise over WPA2? Well, I guess those are two different things, aren't they? WPA2 Enterprise and WPA2, since I'm mentioning it this way. You have a number of options available. Option A is this allows you with use WPA2 Enterprise over WPA2 to integrate a wireless network into directory services, to add public key encryption to the wireless network, to integrate multiple access point manufacturers, to consolidate logs from multiple access points, or to manage access points from a central management console. So there's quite a few options there to be able to determine this. Obviously, the wireless technologies themselves can be made exceptionally secure these days using some of these technologies, but those two names are relatively similar, WPA2 Enterprise and WPA2. But there are differences between those two things, and usually we are talking about those in different ways and being able to use them. So you will be able to answer, in this case, one of those options. This is also, I'm trying to get you into the idea of how these questions are asked on the certification exam. You will see very often questions that asks, which of these cases would you be most likely to use this? And there could be a situation that in this list of things, more than one of these could possibly be correct. But one of these options might be kind of a corner case or an unusual case, but still technically correct. There should be only one of them, though, that really is the most likely case. And when you sit down for the exam, it will jump out at you. If you know your content, you will understand what the most likely case for this is going to be, and you'll be able to answer this. So again, go to Socrative.com to be able to answer these. You'll also be able to see which one of these might fit with what you're doing and being able to work with these. Let's see. We've got a number of people that have answered so far, so let's see how we did. This is, by the way, one of the great things about this is I really sit here and I try to make questions that are going to make you think and try to get you into the mode of understanding what these things are. And I will tell you also, a number of the questions I have today are from the brand new content. So you're going to see new things today. But this was in both the 005 and the 006. And we've got kind of a mixed bag. So we've got 30% have said integrate a wireless network into directory services. 22% said add public key encryption to the wireless network. 5% said multiple access points, 5% said consolidating logs, and 39% said manage access points from a central management console. Well, it certainly makes sense, you would think, from a management console perspective that the word enterprise kind of lends itself, but that's not exactly what WPA2 Enterprise really is. In fact, let's step through this WPA. What is this WPA to start with? It stands for Wi-Fi Protected Access. And there's a number of different WPA versions. This was the encryption type that was released when we found that the WEP encryption, WEP, and that wireless equivalency protocol encryption that we used to use on our wireless access points turned out it was horrible. It was one that had some significant cryptographic vulnerabilities. So we decided, well, let's not use WEP anymore. Let's use something new. So we created a new type of encryption methodology, encryption and authentication, called WPA. And we had this interim WPA that worked with our existing hardware, which we just simply called WPA. And this, of course, is one that used very similar technologies to WEP, but it used a different method to be able to encrypt. We were able to, in many cases, load new software onto our access points and not have to change anything. We wouldn't need new hardware, wouldn't have to upgrade any CPUs, even though it was as it turns out, a more secure encryption. We didn't have to change much with what we were doing with the technology, but there were some significant limitations to this. And ultimately, the final version of WPA that came out was called WPA 2 for WPA version 2. This is one that uses AES for the encryption. It replaced the RC4. This also used something called CCMP, which is counter mode with cipher blockchaining message authentication code protocol, which replaced the TKIP from WPA. So this was another great way to be able to encrypt. In fact, this is the one that we use today, WPA2, on all of our wireless networks. Well, we also have this challenge, of course, in enterprises where you have a lot of people walking in with their laptops, they're logging on to the network. And if you've ever set up WPA2 in your home, you know that you've given it something called a shared key, which means you tell the access point, my shared key is Ninja. And now I give that shared key to anybody on my network who needs access. But that's okay because it's your family, it's your house, it's your guests who might be coming in. Oh, if you need access to my home network, it's Ninja. So that makes it easy for people to type in the passphrase and they're on your network. Well, in a corporate network, you can't really share passwords that way. You have no idea where that password might end up. So instead, you want to integrate your wireless network with something that you're already using for authentication, like a LDAP directory or a directory services that's in your network. That way, every person has their own username and everybody has their own password that's associated with that username. And so WPA2 Enterprise is a way of describing that process. It uses a technology called 802.1x to be able to communicate back to those name services. So it might use something like Radius, or it might use something like an LDAP, or it might use a directory services directly. It may use Kerberos to do that, but it's using directory services and it's talking back to a separate database that's somewhere that has already stored all of your username and password information. And that's why whenever we look at the answers to this question, which was add public key encryption, that was not the major reason. Manage access points from central management console, nope, that's not what enterprise means. If you answered A, the 27% of you that said integrate a wireless network into directory services, you would have gotten that one absolutely correct. But it's only the first question. Don't be dismayed. In fact, if you're any of the 75% of people who answered something else, this was an opportunity to now know that content. And I bet if it's asked of you again, you'll absolutely be able to get right WPA2 Enterprise. You only learn something when you get it wrong. You only learn something when things break. And that's when you really see if you know what you're talking about when you get to those. There is other questions we can go to though. So I've got another question for you. Let's keep this party moving. And again, no answering in the chat room. The answer is, what's so smart about a smart jack? That's kind of an odd question. First, you have to know what a smart jack is. Then you have to know why it's called a smart jack. So kind of a definition question. And I have some options for you to answer. One of these is the smart jack can adjust network speeds based on utilization. The smart jack includes built-in diagnostics and alarm indicators. The smart jack includes GPS functionality. Perhaps the jack can simultaneously support many different WAN topologies, or the jack includes a battery backup to maintain connectivity during power outages. All of those sound pretty smart to me. Certainly a smart jack might have one of those, but one of those, perhaps I could even put this in the question, which of these would be the best reason to call a smart jack smart? And so you should be able to find out about that piece as we're going through this. There's a lot when you start getting into networking, a lot of different technologies, a lot of different ways to connect technologies. And if you are in a network of really any significant size, you're probably going to have a smart jack somewhere in your data center, in your wiring closet. So this is an opportunity to understand more about what smart jacks are and how they work. Again, no answering the chat room, but you can certainly go to Socrative. And I'm sorry if you're watching this in the replay, obviously the Socrative piece isn't going to be here. You're not going to get this interactive back and forth. You'll have to follow along with the rest of us. And if you do want to do that, you can always follow us live. Go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you can find out when we're going to be doing the next one of these and learn more about this piece. So let's see what our possible answers might be, and let's see how you've answered with this particular question. The question, of course, what is so smart about a smart jack? 30% or 29% of you had said that it can adjust network speeds based on utilization. 44% includes built-in diagnostics. 19% said support many different WAN technologies. And 3% and 5% said there's a GPS functionality or there's battery backup. So we've got maybe 3 that people are choosing from. I guess B is the one that most people, but really a second and third right behind is the A and the D. So again, which one of these could it possibly be? Let's look at a smart jack. Here's a smart jack. Grab this right from Wikipedia. It's hard to find a picture of a smart jack. I need to go to somebody's data center and take a picture of one so you can see it. It's this box on the wall. It's usually closed in, just like this one is, because it's not really your equipment. It's really equipment that has been put there by the wide area network provider. They usually have it in a self-contained box. It's not always this way, but generally they do that. They don't want you gaining access to that device or having anybody mess around with that device because it's theirs and they want to have control over that. It makes perfect sense. This is not your CPE or your customer premise equipment. Anything that's yours is something that obviously you'll have access to, but there needs to be a very specific dividing line over what is yours and what belongs to the wide area network provider. And of course, some of their equipment needs to be in your building for this to operate. So you'll commonly see these smart jacks with these covers around them. And inside, there's usually a powered device. Sometimes you'll see lights and you'll see circuit boards and it's powered. Sometimes you won't see any of this. It's all covered up and you can't see those pieces. But generally, you are able to see some of these. In fact, if you have a smart jack, it's a good idea to look at it and see what the lights are on it now, because if there's a problem, it would be nice to be able to get information from there. Even though you can't change anything or touch anything, certainly useful to have there. This might also be called the NID by the network provider. This is your network interface device. Some people call it the Intelligent Network Interface Device. Sometimes the network interface device has no intelligence associated with it. It's more of a generic name for these. The smart jack is the piece that adds the smarts to it. It is usually this powered device. It's usually sometimes the many smart jacks in a big chassis on the wall with all the other telecommunications equipment there. And these are smart because they do a lot of built-in diagnostics. There are alarms built into it that will communicate back to the wide area network provider. They usually aren't telling you about what's going wrong. They're usually giving statistics and information back to the wide area network provider. And it's not unusual for the network provider to call you and say, we're getting a lot of errors on your line. And of course, we know that because the smart jack was set up this way. These smart jacks are set up so that the wide area network provider can talk directly to the device, look at statistics, run diagnostics, and do even things like a loop back. So they will go down to the smart jack and tell the smart jack anything going in the smart jack before you leave the box. Circle it around, loop it back, and send it back to us. And then they'll send a stream of information, and they'll look at the stream of information coming back to them, and they'll determine if any of that information was corrupted along the way. And that way, they're able to make a determination of whether there was any type of problem with the line. So if you're seeing a lot of errors on your router, and you're thinking, maybe my WAN link is bad, they can do a loop back, and they can see if the WAN link is bad. And of course, then they can open it up. It's no longer looped back and say, sorry, we ran our test and everything was fine, which seems to be what they always do anyway. Whenever you work with those, this is one of those that when you start working with them, it becomes really, really useful though if you're running diagnostics. That way, if it's clean on their side, you know the problem must be inside of your building with your equipment. Maybe you can swap out cards inside of your router. Maybe you can replace the cable, do the normal troubleshooting for this. So in this case, if we go back to the answers we had, if you were any of the people that had the option B, includes built-in diagnostics and alarm indicators, the 50% of you got that one absolutely right. Smart jack, it can be configured differently, but it's not changing speeds based on utilization. That's more of a traffic filter or some type of quality of service device or traffic management device. We got no GPS functionality in those, unfortunately, generally speaking. No different WAN topologies. Usually a smart jack is built for one particular kind of topology. And no backup battery. That's not what the smart is of a smart jack. Many of them have battery backup. However, in large environments where there's many racks of telecommunications equipment in these very large data centers, you have this big set of racks that's just for the local telecommunications providers, and they will very often put their own batteries there, just so there's a battery backup for their equipment. So that is the smart of a smart jack. And I think we even learned something with that one as well. Well, with networking, and especially with the Network Plus exam, there is a lot on the Network Plus exam that deals specifically with length of cables, types of cables, and of course, one of those, I got to have a cable of question on my study group because everybody wants one, right? Everybody says you got to have a lot more questions about cables. Nobody says that. This question I have for you, though, it's a pretty good one. Which of these cable categories supports 10G base T to a 55 meter maximum length? It's a very specific question. I'm asking for a very specific kind of thing, and it's for a different set of categories, effectively speaking. And so the options you're going to have are going to be relatively straightforward. Are we talking about category 3, category 5, category 5E, category 6, or category 6A? It's going to be one of those. Certainly one of those categories will apply. This is one of those things that in many ways, I like about the Network Plus exam. I get differing opinions, actually. Many people say they like that on the Network Plus exam, a lot of the information you need to know is very straightforward. It's something you can memorize. You can look at the question about which of these cable categories supports 10G base T to 55 meter maximum length. There's one answer for that. And as long as you know what those differences are, you'll have that piece. And these actually become very, very important when you're designing your network in your data center, in your wiring closets between buildings. You need to know one of those things to be able to do that. The other thing that I start looking at whenever I'm memorizing these things, though, is a lot of people say, I don't like rote memorization. I would prefer these to be more broad scoped. And if you look at the Security Plus exam, I think the Security Plus exam has very few of those, or relatively few of those, very specific rote memorization things. It's more on broad terms and definitions. So I guess it depends on the type of exam you like, and as to which one works best for you. But that's one of those that you kind of have to find your niche in being able to work with those. Let's see how we did. Oh, in the chat room, by the way, somebody was asking about the Network Plus certification and said that they saw something for an N90-005 instead of an N10-005, and asking, what is the N90-005? That is a typographic error. There is no N90-005. So somebody has mistyped something. It's really the N10-005 because there's no such thing as an N90-005. Let's see how you did with this particular question. And again, kind of different opinions on what this one might be. For example, I think most of you, 48% of you, less than half said category 6, but a significant number of you said absolutely we can do this in category 3. Number of you said category 5, not so many category 5E, and some of you said no, you're going to need category 6A to do that particular network type, the 10G base T to 55 meter maximum. Well, again, there's got to be one answer for these. So this is something you really should know. And when you start working with network cabling a lot, you just get used to knowing what these standards are. Here is the updated graphic that I created for the N10006. In fact, pulled this right from the new content to be able to do that. Category 3 was created for a 10 megabit Ethernet, 10 base T twisted pair. To 100 meters. And we don't use category 3 anymore. It's been, as we say, deprecated in the industry. Something you can't find, you can't buy. You certainly should not be installing. You may have some in the wall, however. And if you're looking to replace your category 3, you probably can't find any to purchase because everything has moved to category 5E as a minimum. We also upgraded the category 3 to category 5 to support 100 megabit Ethernet, and we supported gig Ethernet over that as well. I had some clarification in my 006 materials just so everybody was aware of that. And what we found, though, is when we went to category 5 and running 1000 base T, which is the 1 gig speeds over the twisted pair, that when we got out to very long distances, it wasn't performing in a way that we really liked. So we deprecated Cat 5 and upgraded it or updated it to category 5E, and the E stands for enhanced. With category 5E, we support 100 base TX and 1000 base T. You could also support 10 base T over this as well, of course, to 100 meters. This is the minimum standard you would put into a network today is the category 5E. It's generally the most cost effective in the copper cabling line. But we aren't doing 10 gig speeds over category 5E. If you want to do 10 gig, you have to at least do category 6. So there's two different category 6 standards. There's a category 6, which I can do 10G base T, or I can use category 6A, which stands for augmented, and I can also do 10G base T. And of course, I could do any of these lower speeds on this as well. But notice the maximum distances between these two. There's very big difference between those. With the Category 6, I can go somewhere between 37 to 55 meters as part of the standard. I can't go beyond that with that particular Category 6 cabling. If I want to go to that, what we call a standard, 100 meter standard, that's what we always seem to shoot for with our Ethernet standards, we're going to need Category 6A. But my question, of course, asked you about what the standard would be, specifically which cable category supports 10 G-base-T to a 55 meter maximum length. And if you're one of the folks that answered D for Category 6, you would get that one exactly correct. So congratulations to you in being able to do that. I also want to take a moment, by the way, and thank everyone for supporting the website. This is something that I'm a bit of a one-man show where I'm making the content, I'm putting it on the internet. We have a huge number of people watching these. There's a number of costs associated with it, but I don't take donations to my site. Instead, I like to be able to give you something back for anything that you might use to help support. And your support has been fabulous. Thank you so much for supporting what we're doing here with the website. ProfessorMesser.com has grown dramatically just in the last year, really dramatically since the beginning of this calendar year. And I want to thank you for all of that. If you're someone who would like to support the site, or I think if you're somebody who's about to take your Network Plus exam and you need to go through all of the course notes I have for everything that I've done, this is a great way to do it. And it's my study guides. It's an 11-page PDF. It doesn't replace your book. It doesn't replace the videos. But instead of you writing down all this information from my videos, it makes them available all in one single PDF that you can download immediately and put all of your devices and wherever you happen to be, you can be studying from these. I try to fit every graphic. I did fit every graphic and every table and in additional information as well from all of my videos. And they're only $10. This is pretty good. Here's my study guide right now. So I put everything that was in my videos. You probably recognize a number of these graphics because those are the ones that I built myself. There's the DNS resolution process, step by step. Here's the network troubleshooting process. Here's network translations, the DHCP process, and the timers associated with it. So if you're someone who is looking for that last study guide, be able to reference these notes and get that into your skull before stepping in to take the exam, this might be a good option for you. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/netsg. And thank you so much for supporting the website. Can't even tell you how much that helps with our hosting costs and the other things that we use to keep this party going. So let's go back to our questions. Let's see what we've got here. I've got a Mantrap question. So we now have to know these definitions. In fact, this one, I'm trying to remember, this was on the N10005. So this is something that's also on the N10006, perhaps even more so. I want to say it's on the N10005, maybe not. Maybe this was something brand new for the 006, but it's a security question. And you kind of get that from the question itself, which is, in which of these locations would you be most likely to find a man trap? And I'm asking you to pick two of these. So our percentages won't work out exactly correct with this one, but you have two that you could choose. You're going to get these questions on your exam as well, where they will ask you to pick multiple answers. And so they will tell you how many you need to pick. In fact, if you try to answer this and not pick the right amount, it will give you feedback. We said pick two, you only picked one. So the options here are elevator controls, main building entrance, data center entrance, department entrance, or shipping dock. So where would you most likely, and again, the question, most likely find a man trap? This is something that when you start getting into some of these larger environments, you're going to run into these, and they're there for a reason. And you need to understand what the reason is, and you may be tasked with networking these things together. So it's another important security aspect for the Network Plus certification. Again, no answering in the chat room for that. For those of you in the chat room wondering, I'll be working on the N10006 study guide this week. It should be out this week. I should be able to get all of these things together. The content for the videos has already been created. I'm working in my desktop publishing software and trying to get all of those things together. It will be bigger than the last one. There is new content from the 005. It'll be a higher resolution. It's beautiful. You're going to love it. Searchable. It's a lot of improvements over things that I've done before. So that was really good to have that option there. So let's see. how we do with this, go down to Socrative.com. You'll be able to answer this question yourself on what a man trap might be, and we'll see how we've done with this. Let's flip over, and we've got, again, kind of a mixed bag with this one. 9% not said elevator controls. Maybe that's not one that was very popular. Shipping dock, not popular at all. 13% said department entrance. 30% 45. And again, these percentages aren't exactly right because we're picking more than one of these, of course, but we're kind of going with what's on the screen. 28% main building entrance. 46% said data center entrance. So, gosh, we've got kind of at least the top two we could kind of go with, but even the others, elevator controls and department entrance, is in there as well. Well, let's try to figure out what this man trap is. Here's a picture of a man trap. It kind of, the name of man trap implies exactly what it is. It's something that traps you in the middle. It is effectively an entrance that you can only go into. In fact, you go into and then you open a second door to get onto the inside, or it's something that restricts access to only one person at a time. A traditional man trap is one where it lets you in the first door, it closes and locks the door behind you, and then opens the door to the rest of the facility, effectively trapping you in the middle. And in the case of this one, these devices can also trap you in the middle. You'll notice there's a little pie piece right in the middle that it could stop and trap you right in the middle of this piece. And the important part of that is they can not necessarily trap you as a human being. Of course, in this case, they really could, but it's restricting more than one person from getting through at a time as well. So there's multiple security advantages to this. In fact, you can see there's even a little diagram here. Someone might put their smart card here. You gain access one person at a time. You step in. You then, the man trap may be something you have to push, or it may automate the turning and get you into the rest of the building. And it knows if you're in the building or not. If you were in the building and somehow you got out of the building without going back through the man trap, it won't let you back in because you aren't supposed to be outside. If you are a guest or a visitor, you're often given a guest or visitor badge, and your host will go through and then you badge in with your badge and you walk through the man trap just like they did. This is another way to really make sure that your security is, and you know exactly with security who's going into the building and how much they're going into the building. There's no question that somebody who puts their badge on, you can only fit one person in here realistically. So there's not going to be a situation where multiple people can come in behind one person who's badged in. So this is one of those that's a one at a time. You're not going to be able to fit more than one person in, or show up with a box full of donuts, like I mentioned in my Security Plus videos. And sorry, my hand's not free. Can you open the door for me? Well, no, I can't, because it's a man trap. You can't get in. So I can get in, but you're going to have to badge in if you want to get in. So you got to figure that piece out. That solves that particular donut problem that I mentioned in my Security Plus course. This is something, if we look at the answers then, it's very common to see a man trap in the main building entrance. It's also very common to see one in many cases in a data center entrance. I was working in Scotland with a very big bank, and every single one of their data centers had a man trap in front of it. In fact, interesting story, or maybe not. It was a room under construction. I think I may have told this story again. I apologize for those of you who watch these videos a lot. But it was a data center room under construction. There was a man trap. We got in, and then we tried to badge out, and the man trap stopped working. So we were stuck in this data center, but it was under construction. And so there was a phone. We called security and said, the man trap's not working. He just went back to the wall where there was plastic and opened up the plastic and said, okay, you can walk through here. So didn't make us look very smart, although technically he did kind of pull across. He broke the plastic to get through. We didn't want to break anything. That's one of those nifty things to be able to have those there. So if you did answer B and C, you got this one absolutely correct. For those of you wondering, I mentioned earlier there in the chat rooms asking about them as well. The 005 course videos are not ever going to go away. Everything stays on my website. You may not see them listed on the main page, but they're always going to be on YouTube. They're always there. It's more of an archival thing. I removed videos once upon a time, and people people didn't like that. They wanted to see some of the old things because you may occasionally run across some older technologies. It's nice to have those there. There will be a brand new index page for the 006, but the 005 stuff stays there. It doesn't go away. I obviously won't be selling the 005 videos after August 31st, and you won't want to purchase them after August 31st. But that is one of those things that does come in handy when you're working with those pieces. I got more questions for you. By the way, if you're watching this and you want to get continuing education credits for watching this video, I want to be able to provide that to you. And so I can send you an email that is a digital certificate saying you did indeed watch this, but then you have to prove it to me. And a good way to prove that is to go to my website. At the top is a Contact Us link. And really, it's contact me, sends me a message, and in that message, just put the word Mantrap. And if you do that, I'll know that you watched this particular video, and I'll send you back a note that says, yes, indeed, you did participate and had that there. So let's go through and do another question. I have one for you. Again, no answering in the chat room for those of you just joining us. What should always be installed with an equipment rack to protect against accidental electrical discharge? I guess it's going to be one of these questions is something that you would add to that rack to protect against accidental electrical discharge. And here's the options available for you. What should always be installed? Should it be a UPS? Should it be a power filter? Should it be a voltage regulator? Should it be a power inverter? Should it be a ground wire? All of those sound something electrical. All of those seem to have a power something associated with it. So this is one of those where you have to think about what we want to use here. One of these is going to be right, though. We want to find out what should always be installed with an equipment rack to protect against accidental electrical discharge. I guess really the best way to say this would be, which one of these would be the best choice to install with an equipment rack? I should have stuck that terminology in there so it sound like a real message for you. So it sounded like something that was a real test question for you to protect against accidental discharge. Remember, you can answer this over on Socrative.com. Here's the Socrative information. And you can find out yourself what those answers might be. You can answer from any of those and participate interactively in real time. And then we'll find out how you did with those pieces. Whenever you start working on the networking side, I think I did more electrical safety type work with networking than I ever did with PCs and computing and laptop, even though there's obviously a significant electrical aspect to desktops and those types of devices. They're more appliances. You plug them in and that kind of covers the power. I guess if you're building your own or replacing power supplies, there's a power piece of it. But these days, there's so much power with networking. Certainly, the voice over IP technologies have also led us to have power over Ethernet technologies. Even in my studio, I've got cameras that run on power over Ethernet. And so there's a lot of power going over those particular wires that originally were set up just to run Ethernet. Now they're also running power. So you have to think about this as well when you're putting a lot of very high-powered equipment into a rack to also protect yourself should there be any accidental discharge or short of any of that electricity. You don't want it to go into you. You'd like it to go somewhere else. And one of the best ways to do that is to use, I think as 75% of you have said, use a ground wire. Not a UPS. UPS will certainly keep things running if you have a power outage, but it doesn't in any way add any additional safety from a power surge or not a power surge, but a discharge of power that's now on the rails of this 19-inch rack that you've installed that you are now touching. You would prefer that that power did not go into you, that it went somewhere else. Power wants to go into the ground. And so if we say a ground wire, we connect a ground wire to this, it will absolutely send that information down the ground instead of into you, which is one of the most important parts when you're working with that. Power is a very particular thing. You want to be very careful when dealing with power in a computer, when dealing with power in your routers, in your switches. I mentioned in some cases your telecommunications company has equipment in your data center, and many times they will put batteries and have their own power information or power units in there. And you want to be very careful when you're around those particular devices, obviously. Never touch anything in there if you're not quite certain what it happens to be, because there's quite a bit of power going through, especially in these data center environments. In many ways, I feel that we don't protect people or explain to people enough when they walk into a data center that this is more of an industrial environment and you need to be very careful about what you're touching and what's going on in here. The equipment grounding is incredibly important. You have so much power and so much metal in the room that let's say that for some reason, one of the hot wires happens to hit a chassis of a router on the inside. That chassis, of course, is connected to all of your 19-inch racks, which are almost always going to be made of metal. In many cases, mini racks that are connected together. So one piece of power going bad can effectively now electrify that entire set of racks. So having these ground wires there can be remarkably useful and incredibly important. If you don't have grounds on your racks, you need to consider doing that as soon as possible to be able to make sure that that's there. They really are there to protect you. And if your racks are not grounded, you may want to check with your electrician or someone that you have in your environment that deals with the facilities and see what it would take, because there's probably a ground in your data center. Somebody has put a ground in there for something else. That would be a perfect place to connect a ground wire for all of your racks as well. Well, I've got more questions for you. We're 45 minutes in. I've got plenty more for us to work on. So by the way, if you're one of those that did answer ground wire, the option E there, you got that one absolutely correct. Well, there's, as I mentioned, new content on the N10006. And if you've looked at that content, you know that one of those new things deals with something called SCADA. So the question I have for you, in fact, if you haven't been studying for the N10006 or you've not done the Security Plus, this may be a new term for you. And the question I have for you, which of these would be the most likely reason for designating a separate network segment for SCADA, whatever that is? So now we have to know what SCADA is. We have to know, obviously, there's some designation of a separate network segment associated with this. So there's got to be a good reason for doing that. Would that be to add security and control? Would it be to minimize the broadcast? Would it be to reduce the collision domain? Would it be to decrease application response times? Or would it be to increase data throughput? This is one of those questions, by the way, that I built for you that asks what would be the most likely reason and then gives you multiple answers that could technically be correct, but only one of these is the most likely reason. And I know that people will write in my chat room, I hate these most likely questions, but these are what you're going to see on the exam. And if you understand what's being asked of you, the answer, the most likely answer, jumps right to the top. And if it's not jumping to the top for you, go back and read more about that particular content. Watch the video on that content so that you can get a better feel for exactly what's going to be asked of you on this piece. So, of course, you can go to Socrative.com to answer this particular question. And this is one where we run into the really understanding these newer technologies and what's going on. You may find that you may never run across this technology with what you do, but it's remarkable how many times it suddenly shows up for some of the things you're doing, certainly in the news. It's always in the news. So if you're now browsing around, it's going to be one of these things now over the next week. It's one of those where you start looking at a particular car, you're looking to buy a new car, and you're thinking, that I kind of like that car right there. I like that Jeep. And now suddenly you see Jeeps everywhere. I think this may happen to you as well. You'll notice this next week, SCADA seems to be everywhere. Yes, it does. And in fact, in this particular question, I don't know that I fooled anybody. 80% of you said it's to add security and control. And there's a good reason that you would add security and control with SCADA. We'll talk about that in a moment. 8% said minimize the broadcasts. Segmenting a network would, if you segment it with routers, would minimize the broadcast. You would be absolutely correct. Reduce the collision domain. If we were still running half duplex, or maybe you could say this is running wireless for the SCADA network, which never happens. You'll never see a wireless SCADA network anywhere. We'll talk about why in a moment. Technically, it could reduce the collision domain. So again, I'm giving you answers technically correct, but only one of these really is the one that is the most likely reason for this. Decrease application response times. I guess segmenting a network, if it's very busy, could potentially do that. Again, don't let your head wander in these exams. Every question is a self-contained thing. There was no mention in this question that had anything to do with application response times, with utilization on the network, with how busy the network was. You can discount that answer immediately. Increase data throughput. Again, how did we know there was a problem with data throughput before? Don't read into the question any more than has been given to you. Let's talk about SCADA. First, we're talking about why they're asking this. There's a section of the N10006 that talks about when you would segment the network. Segmenting the network has not only some very useful networking advantages, but there are some significant security advantages as well. These days, a lot of environments, companies are taking very important information and they're putting it off into a separate part of the network so they can control it better, they can secure it better, they can watch it better. If there's an accounting database going on over here, there's no reason the accounting information should ever intermingle with the SCADA information. If only the folks that had this responsibility at Target, at Home Depot, at Anthem had segmented this out in a way that they could really view that information and be able to determine if somebody was taking it. Again, that's a great reason to segment the network. You may be complied with rules and regulations, federal, state, local, to segment different parts of the network as well. SCADA is an industrial system. SCADA is something that stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System. So a big name, but this is when you are looking at environments where there is a power generation facility. You have to have some way in the control center to manage and configure and control those big devices that are out there. If you have to turn a dial, you're not going to leave the room, go down to where that device happens to be, turn the dial, and then walk back to your desk. All of these things are automated. They're automated using this technology called SCADA. And it doesn't have to be power. It could be other types of very large devices as well. You see this often in environments where there is manufacturing. You see it primarily in environments where there is power generation, but it's used across the board in these very, very large environments. And the reason you don't run into it, obviously, is because we don't have a lot of large industrial systems in our homes. We might have an air conditioning system, but the ones in our homes, we don't use SCADA to talk to them. We use our thermostat. We're not talking to it and automating this process. If you go out and just Google around for SCADA security breach, you'll see many times where someone has found a SCADA device that was accessible from the internet and used the default login and password. And they could effectively change what was happening with that particular piece of industrial equipment. This can obviously cause problems, but it could be significant issues for not only security, but welfare. You don't want somebody who's working on a piece of equipment and then have somebody turn it on when they're inside of it, especially if it's electrical or if it's mechanical. That's not what you're shooting for. So there has been throughout the years now an enormous emphasis in securing SCADA. That's why I mentioned you will never see a SCADA device on a wireless network. There needs to be complete control and visibility. You should not see a SCADA. You shouldn't see, you'll never see. Maybe you will, but it shouldn't be that way. You will never see this device connected to the internet intentionally. So those are cases where the SCADA becomes very important at securing. And so a good reason for segmenting SCADA, and perhaps the best reason for segmenting SCADA onto its own little network, is that it's away from the internet. It means that you can control. And if you look at the traffic going by, you see just SCADA traffic. You're not seeing any other kinds of traffic go through there. And you will see exactly where it's coming from and where it's going to. And you'll be able to identify if traffic may be going from or to a place that it should not be going. I also want to tell you about some other pieces. With the 005 and the 006 exams, there was a lot of emphasis in not just doing multiple choice exams, but there was also a lot of emphasis in being able to do performance-based questions. And performance-based questions in the world of the Network Plus and the Security Plus and the A Plus are, some people call them simulations, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's a simulation there. It means that you have to do things like put things in particular order, list out the speeds from the slowest to the fastest, and they might give you a lot of different kinds of technologies. Or it might be something where you need to be at a command line that's very simulation-like. So you never know exactly what you're going to get with these. Now, obviously, if you're going to be working on a simulation, you're going to want to be able to do something like work in and use something that's now in front of you, where you can touch it, you can run a lab But one of the challenges is that you may not have equipment in your facility to set up a lab. You may not want to change your operating system that you're using. You may want something that's available all the time. In fact, I'm going to change this and run it in HTML5 just so you can see all of this working. I'm going to try to run this in HTML5. We'll see now that I'm doing this. There's HTML5. So here is a lab that is set up, and I'm able to see, look, I've got an entire network here, an entire lab set up through something called Freestyle. These are the Freestyle Live Labs that I can now get access to. I've got special pricing for the Live Labs. The router and the LAMP device don't have front ends. But here's a good example of being able to use this and work in a live lab environment and be able to, this is not a static screen. I'm using this Windows device and being able to work with it. So I can step through a lab. It tells me exactly what to do, how to change the network cards, change the interface IP addresses. I can capture traffic. We've got Nmap already running, so I can run some searches of the network and be able to map out things that are on the network. It is something that's always available. You don't need any extra software. That's why I got rid of the Java piece. Well, I tried to in this particular case. I wanted to show you the HTML5 piece. So these are running in HTML5. I don't have to run that Java plugin, even though I have it on my computer. It's something that is very easy to use. It steps you through all of these hands-on requirements of the Network Plus certification. And I've got special pricing for you. So if you're somebody who wants to get that lab environment, that hands-on, so you solidify these things in your brain, this is a great way to do it. And the special pricing that I have is one that is $99. So it's a great way to get access to all of this without setting up any software in your device. The labs are already predefined. You can step through all of those, and I don't mention it here, but all of the Network Plus book from GTS Learning is included with this. There are sample tests that you can step through for Network Plus that are included with this. So you're getting more than just the live labs. You're also getting quite a bit of content that's going to help you study for things outside of the labs as well. So something to consider if you want more information on that, and a free hour. You can try it yourself. See if this really is for you. You can go to professormesser.com/netlabs and learn all about those pieces of it. So we want to thank GTS Learning for also supporting what we're doing here at Professor Messer. Well, I've got more questions for you. Let's step through these pieces. Oh, and for the SCADA piece, I think we answered that one. Let me jump back real quick just so we finish up that piece. If you're one of the 82% that said add security, add control, you would have gotten that one exactly right. So let's go to the next question I have for you, which is, in which of these situations would you be most likely to need a posture assessment? And you need to pick two of those. Again, I wanted to give you some of the new content that you might be asked about on the Network Plus exam. And a posture assessment is one of those new topics that you need to know about. Would you need a posture assessment if you were upgrading operating systems on web servers? Would you most likely need a posture assessment if you're VPN users from other countries, maybe people connecting from outside of your country? If there's BYOD users at the corporate office? Are you deploying monthly Windows patches? Are you adding new computers to the Windows domain? Two of these, again, it says pick two of these would be the most likely reason that you would need a posture assessment. Again, no answering in the chat room with these pieces. Posture assessments are increasingly common to see in our environments, and that's because a lot of the things that we need to have on our networks are requiring that of us. We'll talk more about that in a moment. If you'd like to answer this question, you can go out to Socrative.com, go to the Professor Messer room. It's Professor Messer. Notice the spelling's a little bit different to be able to get there. If you ever go to ProfessorMesser.com, you can spell it a lot of different ways. You'll get to my website. But for Socrative, you got to type it in exactly the way that it's stated. Professor Messer. It only sort of rhymes, doesn't it? I guess it's close enough, right? We can get there from that piece. Posture assessments. Let's talk about how posture assessment is going to help us. What I like about this is obviously new content for most of us because we're all over the place with this one. We're answering a lot of different ways for this one. It's a virtual tie across all of these. So only two of these really make sense for a posture assessment. But first we have to understand what really a posture assessment is. And this goes back to this idea that we have of bring your own device effectively started this, although it wasn't the only reason to have this here. A posture assessment is something that allows us to understand when somebody's on our network, what type of security risk is this device? I need to do an assessment of that device so that I can understand the security posture of those. And BYOD was a good reason for this. When everybody got iPhones, iPads, Android devices, we're all bringing our own tablets to work, and our management was telling the IT department, you need to support these. We want people to be able to bring these devices because it makes them better workers. They are able to do their job better if they have this technology. But the problem is, can I trust this device to be inside of my network? Can somebody put software on this device, and once they come into my network, have that software start grabbing things and sending them back out to the mothership? These are significant security concerns, and as it turns out, some very well-founded security concerns. So before anybody gets a chance to connect to the network, we're going to check it. We're going to see, is it a device I already trust? Maybe your environment, you can bring your own device, but I got to check it first. And once I've checked it, it's a trusted device. Maybe I'm running some other software on it that allows me to trust it more. Maybe it's running antivirus. Does it have corporate applications installed on it? Is it a mobile device? Is it an encrypted disk device? And it really doesn't matter what the device is. I need to perform that assessment of the device to be able to protect myself. These posture assessments are done using agents that you might install, applications that you install that are always running on the device. There's also types of posture assessments where the agent runs, it reports back to the mothership, and then it unloads out of memory. Those are non-persistent agents. And it just depends on the technology you're using to perform the posture assessment that dictates what options you might have available to you, either persistent, non-persistent, in some cases both, depending on the technology that you're using. Many times it's a VPN front end that's doing this posture assessment. Some environments have dedicated hardware and software that's all it does is perform posture assessments. And if somebody doesn't pass the assessment, maybe you're checking it and this device doesn't have antivirus, they're not performing disk encryption, I've never seen this device before, it's not trusted, you might have your network put it in its own little quarantine network. So it doesn't get access to the corporate network, it's only going to gain access to the things that it needs to gain access to. And perhaps only gives it just enough access maybe out to the internet so they can download the latest antivirus and install it onto their device. So in our particular situation, we've got a number of options available. We can upgrade operating systems on web servers. Well, posture assessment really wasn't designed, or we don't think about using posture assessment for upgrading operating systems on web servers. So it's not A. Deploying monthly Windows patches, that's almost the same scenario. The Windows patches are coming from Microsoft. We're installing them on our own machines. That's a pretty trusted process. There's no need to check to see what type of security posture might be on our Windows devices. Adding new computers to the Windows domain, well, we're performing our own security posture at that point, but we already trust these machines. I bought this laptop. I'm putting the laptop in. I'm imaging it with my corporate image. I'm adding it to the Windows domain. That's not generally when the posture assessment is done. Generally, we're doing a posture assessment when we don't trust something, such as when somebody is VPNing in from another country. And of course, there's things we're going to make sure that they have the proper authentication. Maybe they're using multiple forms of authentication. They have a key card or some type of secondary authentication mechanism. They're coming from another country. Maybe we'll check them and make sure that that device really is trusted. And of course, if somebody brings their own device to the corporate office, that might be another good reason to do a posture assessment of that device. So in this particular case, if you answered C or you answered B or C, in this particular case, you would have gotten it absolutely correct to have there. So that's a good example of how posture assessments might work for you and how you might have those work in your network as well. They're, as I mentioned, increasingly popular. And in your environment, if you're somebody who's been given access via VPN, I'm seeing an increasing number of organizations use this. I used to install and work with posture assessment devices or technologies built into VPN software. So you connected via VPN, and the first thing it did was check your machine. What operating system are you running? Do you have the latest patches? Are you running antivirus? Is disk encryption there? There's a lot of different things that you can go through to learn about those. I want to mention again how important it is to get the exam objectives. If you're somebody who is working on the N10005 or you're planning to do the N10006, you want to absolutely have a list of everything that might be asked of you on the exam. And a great way to do that is to go out to CompTIA's website and get that list of objectives. For instance, the N10006 is a really good example of this. It's enormous. It tells you everything. Unfortunately, I have people all the time that come into my chat and say, I took my exam. Boy, they asked me a lot of questions I wasn't expecting. There's no possible way that could be the case. If you've downloaded these objectives, you know what all the domains happen to be, and it tells you, and the CompTIA is probably best at doing this. You can see I'm even making notes on mine. Explain the functions and applications of various network devices: routers, switches, multi-layer switch, firewall, HIDs, IDS, IPS, access point, content filter, load balancer, hub, analog modem, packet shaper, VPN concentrator. And that's it. That's your list. As long as you know every single one of these, what they are, the functions, and how they apply as various network devices, you now know everything you need to know for Domain 1, Section 1.1. Then you can go to the next domain section. 1.2, compare and contrast the use of networking services. Extremely detailed. So always take advantage of these details and understand exactly what's going to be asked of you, because this is where you will know and have complete knowledge of everything that is here. Don't be caught walking into the exam and have no idea what was going to be asked of you on this exam. That's a great way. You can find these objectives by going to the CompTIA website. I have a quick link from my page. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, and you can download the objectives for the test that you want. CompTIA probably does a better job at this than anyone else to be able to do that. So there's your tip of the week, being able to take that with you, or tip of the month, take that with you and be able to do that. We've unfortunately come to the end of our hour. If you're here and you want to stick around for the after show, I'm taking your live calls after this. But again, I'll point you to the Network Plus study guide, so you can find out how you can get my course notes and go through those at professormesser.com/netsg. Again, remember, you can subscribe on YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube, Twitter/Twitter, Google Plus/Google+. Just type in Professor Messer /something, and you're going to get to Facebook or Google Plus or Twitter or any one of those. Again, you can save money if you're going to take your exam. Don't pay full price. Get those vouchers, 10% off at professormesser.com/vouchers. I want to thank GTS Learning again for supporting us and giving special pricing with their live labs. You can get your hour free at professormesser.com/netlabs. And thanks to all of you. I would not be able to put this thing on and have these videos available if it wasn't for your support. And I know I thank you every month for this, and I mean it every month. Could not thank you enough for everything that you do. Thanks for joining us again. We'll see you next time on the study group. Thanks, everyone. I know, that was an hour. It's like so fast to have that there. That just flew by with that piece. In fact, I did more questions here. We're gonna have to wait till next month. I've already got extra questions that we'll be able to get through next month and go those. I don't have to rewrite or do extras with that. Let me get let's get the call-in going. Let's host a show. Let's do this. It's gonna make noise if I do this. Begin a show. Yes, begin. As it say, start the show. There we go. And here we are. Call in the show. No calls. I need to call myself. How can I have a show? My show call-in, by the way, is done in the cloud. Get a little feel for what's going on here. It's all done in my cloud. So let's connect to this. I'm going to call that number. There we go. I'll connect to it, and then you can call the number.
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios.
You're welcome.
Host and call screener
You're
line.
welcome.
Please enter your
Yes.
show number and press pound.
I will do that. If I could figure out what my show number is, I will absolutely do that. Okay, I got it. Let's see if we're fast enough.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
I was fast enough. I just have to figure out my PIN number. There we go. This is the exciting part, the gripping part of the call-in.
You are now in the host room.
I am. That was easy. And some of you have already beat me there. You're already there and in the screening queue. Let me take a sip here, and let me first pick up the phone, and we'll talk to our, I probably have a way I can show some of this. There we go. So you can go to the studio line, and we'll pick up this call from the 604 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Oh, hung up. They'll have to call back. They dropped. So sad. We've got others there that have called in, but we've got, are you there? No, the 661 is there. Are you there, caller? No, 604 was there. Well, call back. So the lines are now open. It's working. And you can see the number on the screen. Also, if you're professormesser.com/live, the phone number is there as well. Let me pop over to the chat room. There was a lot that was, it's a bit of I do call it the battle station. There's a lot going on here. In fact, I have more toys that I got for the battle station. Where's my other toys? I've got to show this. It's show and tell time while we're waiting for the calls to come in. You can kind of see the computer I was working on in the back. Let me grab this piece. Okay. So I've got more stuff coming in. Let's see if I can hear myself. There we go. So one of the challenges I've had, you folks have seen me do this in my other study groups, is that I could never get my extra recording system together. For those of you that are familiar with what we're doing here, I've got a TriCaster here that does my video switching. Kind of see the control panel of the TriCaster here with all these little windows going on. There's some preview and live views that I have in front of me. I can see my controls up on the front as well for the TriCaster. But the TriCaster recording is one recording system. And for those of you that know about backups, one recording system does not a backup make. So there is additional recording. I've been wanting to get one of these for the longest time. So I was able to get a new recording system that's going to go right in the rack next to me that is going to do additional video recording. I know this is not necessarily networking related. It really has very little to do with what most people are doing. This is more for people that are doing video casts or storing a lot of video. But I've got SSDs coming, and it's going to sit right in the rack right down here to the right of me. This desk that I have has a 19-inch rack on the left and the right. Most everything is happening in the left rack. You can't even see over there. If I moved, you probably could. So the left rack, except now I've got wires everywhere. So the left rack really has a lot going on. That's where most everything is. Where the TriCaster is, the audio is there, everything is happening down there. The right rack currently doesn't have much inside of it. So the right rack is going to have practically everything going on with the video recording. So that's where we're going to get all the video recording stuff happening right there. And I'm going to use this HyperDeck Studio to do it. It's kind of an interesting system. It records to SSD only. You slide them in. You don't even need a chassis. It just slides in the SSD. It also, when it finishes one SSD, it flips to the other one, and then you could swap it out. So you could have just constant recording if you wanted. I'll have a couple terabyte SSDs in there, and I can go for hours and hours and hours and not think about it. This can also replay video, which is something I've been thinking of doing, is having a separate video channel that's always showing something. So maybe something I think about. The on-demand tends to work pretty well, but I could practically do anything. I could take video from outside, video from... I have cameras on the outside of the studio. There's a lot of animals out there. There's a lot that's there. Lots of gadgets. I got plenty of gadgets. It's like having a boat, except I'm not going anywhere. I'm just dumping the money into it anyway. But there it is. There's a lot happening, and it takes a lot to get one of these things going and getting it going with something that's got quality. You need good cameras. You need a good method. During the study group, we've got a lot happening here. We've got the Q&A. We've got the dial-in for the calls. We've got the chat room going. I've got the video switching. Audio is a completely different thing altogether. So the audio has its own challenges, trying to make sure. In fact, that's one of the most important parts of this is the audio. That's it. The gaming computer is it's done. You can't see it. You can kind of see it back there. It's back in the darkness over there behind the mic. It's back that direction. You can kind of see it there. It's finished. I got it all done, and we will be setting up and getting that there. I got to load the operating system today. Got to load Windows on it, and we're done. I had to change a few things with the build, but it effectively worked exactly the way I was thinking to have that there. Very, very useful. Have that. Okay, let's see. Well, I do have some callers here. Again, a 661, which may not be a 661, but we're going to answer anyway. Hi there, caller.
Good morning, Professor.
Anthony, how are you, sir?
Fine, and you?
Doing fine, sir. Thank you for calling. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, it's good to be watching you this morning.
Yeah, weren't you having some
I have a
audio
question.
problems earlier? Did you get all that worked out?
Yeah. Finally, I guess my mic on your YouTube was put to mute. I guess I was moving the mouse and must have hit it unknowingly.
I have an application I use all the time that does that to my, I think it's Skype that does it to something else. You know, I have everything set up in this pristine mode, and then you don't touch anything, and yet somehow it changes.
Yeah.
Yep, I understand.
Yeah, that happens to me sometimes.
What can we do for you today?
I have a question. How do you, number one, use Windows Process Monitor to check to see if you got any viruses or anything on your computer?
Well, none of it is an absolute perfect solution. Process Monitor is a good start, I think, to be able to do that. Why don't I pull up a Windows in front of me and we'll have a look at what the options might be. I'll pull up a Windows 7, for example, although Windows 8, 8.1, and 10 have some pretty nice process monitoring. They've updated those even past the Windows 7, quite a bit past Windows 7. And I've got other tools that I like to use as well. Of course, I'm pulling up my Windows. This is what I get when I try to pull up Windows. I know you won't be able to see this on here. I'm pulling up a VMware session. It just went through the Windows updates. It's running updates on my Windows. So of course, when I want to demonstrate something, it's running updates instead of actually loading the operating system.
Okay.
Anyway, one of the challenges you have though with Process Monitor, especially as how Process Monitor is associated with viruses, is a lot of them hide. They are not going to show themselves in Task Manager. So things like Process Monitor may be able to give you more of an insight into what's going on. Okay, we finally got the operating system up and running. Let me load up the things that I have, because I was talking about this. I guess this is sort of a spillover from the call last week. Is that what prompted this?
Yeah.
For those of you that were listening in last week, it was I think it was Allie was her name, called in and said, I'm running and my machine is stuttering, and the audio is stuttering. It's making a horrible noise. It's like, which is absolutely annoying. And so I recommended, checking Task Manager, but I recommended this separate program called Process Monitor, which is from Microsoft. Don't load it from anywhere but from Microsoft. Process Monitor is, here's the tool right here. It's from Mark Rusinovich and Bryce Cogswell wrote this. This is the sysinternals that Microsoft bought a number of years ago. I haven't even loaded it in my VM, so I'm going to run it right now. And I just downloaded it from Microsoft. I'm going to run it. I'm going to agree to the license terms. I didn't even read them. No, I read them completely. What do you mean I didn't read them? And I know it's very hard to see. It's very hard to see on my screen. I wonder if I have font options here. I can make this a lot bigger for you. Let's put this really big so everybody can see it. That didn't change a thing, did it? Didn't change anything for seeing the fonts, I don't think. Oh, yes, it did. Well, it made it too large. So now I've created a problem. What Process Monitor is, it's a way that you can watch everything happening behind the scenes in Windows. And if you've ever wondered what is happening back there on my system, there is a lot going on in Windows. You can see just on my screen, just in a matter of seconds, it puts up all of this information, tons of information on the screen. Some of it I can recognize, some of it I can't. It's a huge amount of data. So this is not something that you would necessarily want to do if you didn't have any knowledge of networking, but it's something that does help you if you want to piece through and understand exactly what's happening on the back end with your computer. So I think I can set this up in a way just to keep rolling through the views of it. So it will just keep auto scroll. There we go, Control A. So I'm not doing anything right now. And you can see on this Windows, which is a virtual machine, which has nothing running on it. I've got nothing running in the system, and things are just streaming by. every second, there must be
background.
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines going by. A lot of this is based on this installer that I have running in the background for this piece. So, and I knew that because when you look on the left side, it tells you what the process name is. And you can see on mine, it's something called Trusted Installer. Boy, I hope that's a trusted installer, but that may be your first clue about what's using your system at a particular time. If I go back to this, the question that was asked last week from Allie, she loaded this and saw whenever it was making that noise, she parsed this out and saw there was one particular Dell storage management program. And she was able then to do some Googling and found out this is a program that Dell puts on their computers, allows them to manage it. And it had a bug on particular systems that had the whole system making these horrible noises. So you could disable that, uninstall it. Dell was creating a hot fix for it, and she found exactly what the problem was and was able to fix it based on what she saw in Process Monitor. You might see applications here that are using Process Monitor that are trying to access a registry setting and they don't have access for it because I'm going to stop this because it just scrolls and scrolls and scrolls. Let's have it, let me stop the capture by clicking on the magnifying glass. Tons of information. More information than any one human being would ever really know about Windows, quite honestly. But if you're trying to parse things out, there's a filter mechanism where you can filter on particular applications. Maybe you're looking for a particular process and you just want to track what's happening with that process. Maybe you're starting an app and the app takes forever to load. Well, filter out just for that particular executable name and watch what it does, because as it's going through, for instance, let's do this one. This Trusted Installer is trying to create a key called, here's the key where it's creating it in the registry. There's success, and it tells you exactly what it created. And there are times, though, that had something like a name collision. Other times, let's keep scrolling through. If there's a problem, it's going to tell us. And maybe a lot of what we're seeing going by is based on this name collision for this process. Well, let's go to Task Manager then and look at all the processes that are running on my computer and try to get a feel for what's happening there. Well, I don't see the process necessarily running right now. Let's show all processes from all users, though. And now it must be a system process because there's Trusted Installer.exe right now. And I have a feeling Trusted Installer is something that's used by Windows to update itself, to install things. This is a brand new Windows setting. And in fact, if I look, I can see here's the Windows that says they're in updates, install updates for my computer. So I suspect that's exactly where that's coming from. And it's mighty busy on my system. This is not for the faint of heart. It is not it's not a technology in that or a program, an application that really is going to just point a green, yellow, or red light and say, here's where the problem is. But if you're somebody like me who likes to get into the operating system, I like to get on the network. I like to do Wireshark traces. I like to look at the protocols. I like to break it down and see everything. This will tell you everything happening in Windows, including what the malware might be doing. Now, the problem is that malware might call itself something that looks innocuous. It may call itself Solitaire. It may call itself Trusted Installer. How do we know for sure that's not malware? Well, we don't. We now have to do more research to get there. That's one of those ways that I can really get into to do this. There's a lot of great information in sysinternals. Process Monitor is one good one that you can use. There are others that I have also used, and these are from the folks at TechNet. And you just have to look for Process Monitor from Windows. That's one great way to do it. They have a whole section of process utilities, and I generally put 2 programs on my computer. I put Process Monitor, and then I also put another one called Process Explorer. This is a replacement for Task Manager. In fact, you can configure it to be an actual replacement of Task Manager. In fact, when you run it, it looks very similar to Task Manager. And this is probably your next step. Once I know that it's this Trusted Installer program, look how different this is than the Task Manager that I was just running. And notice that it does things in a hierarchical view. So you can really see what's happening with your system and where it's going to do all of these things. You can see there's Trusted Installer right there in my list, and I can double click it and it will tell me a lot more information than Task Manager ever did in my system. Here's Trusted Installer. It's under SQL and Windows Servicing. Here's the performance of it, the performance graph. You can see it's busy. It's doing things. How much CPU it's doing. Here are the services that it's running. It's the Trusted Installer service. It's actually called Trusted Installer. If I go into my Windows services, it enables the installation, modification, and removal of Windows updates and optional components. Exactly what we thought it was. If this service is disabled, install or uninstall of Windows updates might fail for this computer. So it is the Windows update process. I can see what network security, environment, any strings that's associated with the service itself. So I can see, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Let's pull out any text that might be inside of that executable to see if we can make any sense of it. So I use those two things in conjunction with each other. And in fact, the Process Explorer has a great little feature in the options where you can tell it that I want to run it at login. I want to even go to Virus Total and confirm what I'm seeing at Virus Total. We've done Virus Total before in our after shows before. It's got some great functionality here. So if you're someone who's into knowing what's happening on your computer, Process Monitor and Process Explorer are two great options to be able to use for those. So you really get a nice feel for that.
Where would you suggest I look to maybe a video or something to walk you through and teach you basically the functions?
There are plenty out there. I want to say that Mark Rusinovich has even done some that are on YouTube, because this was a company that was its own standalone company called Sysinternals, its own group of folks, and they were building all of these really awesome Microsoft utilities that really went into the internals, the Sysinternals, the internals of Windows, and was able to pull out and show you information a way that Windows was never able to do by itself. Microsoft liked this so much that they bought them. And that's why you see that the Sysinternals products continue to be developed and updated today. It's Mark Rusinovich and his team. I think that Mark is still at Microsoft doing those things. And you're able to get all of those. There are tons of videos because now Microsoft is a backer. They're the ones who own this technology now. So there's plenty of things out on the YouTube to be able to break down those things. And probably some, if you ever find some out there on YouTube, see if I can find some that have Mark Rusinovich speaking. Those would be great to watch because he is remarkably knowledgeable in all things internal to Windows. Mark Rusinovich comes right up. Here we go. In fact, I bet this is a great one to look at. My first hit after the ads when I Googled Mark or did a YouTube search for Mark Rusinovich was Case of the Unexplained, Troubleshooting with Mark Rusinovich, that he did at TechEd North America 2014. So relatively brand new, 9 months ago. There's a great troubleshooting step-by-step that he did. I've watched these before. They're phenomenal. So look for anything that he's done and just you go down your YouTube hole. Start at that one and go down the YouTube hole there, because you know the next set of recommended videos is going to be another set of troubleshootings or Mark Rusinovich or Sysinternals or something like that, or a cat video, and then you get off on a completely different tangent.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Professor.
Good to hear from you, Anthony. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
I think I've used these tools. I can't even remember how long it's been. It's got to be back to the Windows 95 days, maybe somewhere in there. It's just been phenomenal to have those. Yeah, Channel 9's a good choice too. Microsoft has their own marketing kind of channel for their technical videos, Channel 9. So you can Google that, or I guess if you're going to do it properly, you would Bing Channel 9, wouldn't you? A little bit of that. Now in the chat room, somebody's asking, G. Russell asks if I can talk about Nmap usage. Well, there's about days and days and days of content I can talk about Nmap usage. Maybe if there's a particular thing about Nmap you're looking to do. For those of you not familiar, I wrote a book. It's the only book I ever wrote was on Nmap. Nmap is a network mapping technology. It allows you to sit on your network and effectively find what else is out there. You can, from your workstation, First, determine if other devices are on the network, and then start learning more about them. What operating systems are running in those devices? What type of services are running on those devices? Is there a web service? Is it email? What type of web service? Which manufacturer's web service? What version of that type of manufacturer's web service is running on that device? It's remarkable how much information you can gather from Nmap. Nmap has basically, people use Nmap to find out what's on the network when they don't know what's there already. But there's some nice operating system profiling and scanning that it can do. And there is also some service scanning that it can do. That's how you can determine what the operating system is. That's how you can determine what services are running on the operating system. In fact, there are, I think HoneyD is a honeypot that uses the Nmap service descriptors to emulate all of the different services that Nmap knows about, which is in the thousands of thousands. I guess it's tens of thousands of different services, maybe hundreds of thousands by now. That's an exceptional honeypot, because one of the ways that the bad guys determine if you're a honeypot is they query you in a way that you would not be able to respond back properly unless you were really that device. Well, with Nmap, having all of those descriptors of what those services are, it can emulate operating systems and services because it knows what those are supposed to say. So it's almost like turning Nmap around and pointing it the other direction. Really remarkable. I need to load up a HoneyD session and just show you interactively with people coming in and trying to hit that honeypot. I've done that in the past. It's a lot of fun. And there's plenty of live Linux distributions you can run with HoneyD already running on that. I should set up my fake network here and just watch what happens when the bad guys come from around the world, being able to do that. Very, very useful to have that there. Now, am I passionate about security or networking or both? It's, networking is the glue that binds all of this together. This is when I start looking at these. This is where you really get into a lot of detail with this. I think if you know networking, you can do anything. You can do database, you can do security. Part of where I started in this field was with kind of the operating system side. I moved into networking, I moved into security, and now I've kind of moved into this. So I really like all of those. I love the OS side of things. I love the network side of things. I love the security side of things. There's probably all the same from my perspective. Let's see who else is here. The 604 area code. Are you there, caller? I can hear me.
Hi, Professor.
Hey, are you there? What's your name?
Afsar here.
Hey, how are you? What can we do for you today?
Good. Good. I have a question for you.
Sure.
Question is, which version of Network Plus is you recommend? So what is the difference on the Network Plus, the new one and the old one?
Right. We got two now, because actually today is the first day that you would have been able to take that latest version of Network Plus. So there's this N10005, there's this N10006, and I think the answer is, of course, it depends. I think that if you're somebody who's already been studying for your Network Plus, you've already been working on your certification, you've got all the books, you've got all the study materials, and in fact, there's probably a lot more N10005 study materials than there is N10006 since it's brand new. I would say keep going with the N10005. Go with the 005 version. You've got until August 31st, and if you pass it, you get exactly the same certification than if you take the 006. So it doesn't matter which test you take, ultimately you get the same cert. So you don't have to worry about that piece of it. Now, if you're somebody just starting with Network Plus, I generally recommend get the latest one. That way, if somebody asks you, which one did you get? Or you might even brag and say, well, I just got the one that just came out. I have the brand new Network Plus. I guess you could market yourself that way a little bit better. And that way, you at least have a way to have someone know that you have the latest set of knowledge that has been provided by CompTIA on the 006 exam. Sometimes your employer will tell you which one he wants, or your prospective employer. They may say, I would like you to take the 006 if you're going to be taking the exam. That's rare to see that happen, but I have seen that in the past. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, thank you very much.
It's good luck. Which one do you think you're going to be taking? You take the 5 or the 6?
I would go with the new one.
Yeah, I think if you're just starting out, that's a good way to go. And my study guides and course notes will be available in a week. The videos start shooting about that same time frame. So there's already plenty of books out there. I think you'll be fine.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Good luck with that.
Bye now.
I love the Network Plus exam. I think I mentioned the Network Plus is, once you know networking, you can really slide through all those other pieces. You'll be able to understand what's happening with databases. You'll understand what's happening with web servers. You understand what's happening with voice over IP systems. You understand what's happening with all of the technologies running across the network. And you can even get into the heavy duty networking if you wanted, or of course on the security side. Security, a firewall is nothing but a big networking device. It's doing network address translation. It's doing VPNs with encryption. It's doing content inspections, doing packet filtering. There's stateful inspection. So if you know the networking piece, you already understand the underlying technologies. You can just apply the other pieces right on top of it. With those, the new video series for Network Plus is going to be great. There's great content in there. Every single presentation has been revamped. I'm producing them in 1080 instead of 720, so we're even increasing the HD quality of the videos themselves. Just great stuff that's going to be in there. I can't wait to get those going, to start editing, to get those out on the street. I think it's going to be a lot of fun too. I like the Network Plus course. There's really good information inside of that. So those I did a lot with operating systems in the very beginning. When Windows was first really getting mainstream, Windows 3.0 was the first big mainstream version of Windows. Prior to that version, Windows version 2.11, I think it was very specialized. It ran PageMaker for people doing desktop publishing. It was very graphical, but it was not mainstream yet. When you hit version 3, that's when enterprises, corporations started really installing that onto their operating systems, into their workstations, because you could do some great things. There was multitasking. There were multiple windows. We didn't have that before. It was one app at a time. When you were done with your desktop publishing, you exited your desktop publishing, you launched your email. When you were done with email, you closed out email, you opened up your desktop publishing again. Who wants to do that? That's a bit of a pain itself. Here's the 714 area code. Are you there, caller?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, what's your name?
Nathan.
Hi, Nathan. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you today?
Well, I was originally studying for the CCENT and then CCNA, and
Sure.
I did a lot of binary math and subnet study for that.
Yes, you did.
Decided with my lack of experience with Cisco gear to scale it back and focus on Network Plus first. But I was curious how binary math dependent is this test for Network Plus.
It's interesting that is one of the biggest, I think, I don't want to say pain points, but it's a point of contention. There's anxiety around this particular point. And I guess it's well stated, because the challenge you have with anything dealing with math first is a problem, and then dealing with something that's not base 10. I got 10 fingers. I can handle that. Base 2, that's a little more of a challenge. And in the case of the new Network Plus, they even took it up a notch. Let me tell you what I mean. Okay. You'll have to deal with my numbering systems. There is a section. That's not the screen I wanted to show you. Let's show you this one here. Whoops, there we go. There's a section of the N10005, a very tiny section that deals with subnetting. It's very small, at least subnet calculations. It's good on the Network Plus to know the different classes and what the default classes are for the different IP address ranges. They talk about CIDR block notations. You need to understand what that means. And you might get one subnetting question on the Network Plus. Maybe you'll get two. But there's so much other content on the Network Plus that you're not going to get like the Cisco exams are, where you have to be able to answer these subnetting questions in 15 seconds. And if you don't get them, you're going to run out of time. I mean, that's just how those Cisco tests are. Network Plus has so much content that you might not get any subnetting calculation questions at all. But you should still know how to do it, because you might get one, and it'd be great to get that one right, if you know what I mean. On the latest Network Plus, they want you to understand numbering systems. They go through, this is section 5.2. This is the N10006. 5.2, explain the basics of network theory and concepts. And they talk about encapsulation and de-encapsulation, modulation techniques. And they go through, you need to understand different numbering systems. They specifically say binary, hexadecimal, and octal. Now, they don't really go into details about how much you should know about binary, hexadecimal, and octal. But like my binary math video, on the N10006, there will also be a hexadecimal math video and an octal math video. The fortunate part of this is once you know how to do one of these, you can do all of them, really. You draw the little chart out and you can calculate them all pretty easily. But that's one that is a bit of a difference on the 006 is you're going to need to know binary, hex, and octal, the differences between. I don't know if they want you to do math on these. It doesn't go into that level of detail, but I'm going to show you anyway because it's so easy, and quite honestly, it will help you later on if you know how to do that as well. So that's what my recommendation would be is don't worry so much about the subnetting. I have had people get wrapped around the axle with subnetting on the Network Plus, and they're spending hours and hours and hours, and they're banging their head. And I've literally told them, don't even do it. Don't study it. Don't do, at least not the subnet calculation. Don't worry about it. Don't go through trying to figure out how many hosts are on a subnet. Don't figure out how many subnets you can create from a particular range. Just don't do it. Ignore it. Just drop it. You're struggling with it so much. Study everything else in the exam. You could have taken that 10 hours that you've been banging your head against the wall, and you could have been studying all these other things and getting those answers right. Ultimately, I think once you get it, it's much easier. But if it's a real problem for you, drop it, put it aside, do everything else, and then maybe revisit it once you're done with those other pieces. It's not going to have the same emphasis that it has on those Cisco exams. The CCENT itself, which is the very first, the ICND1, the very first Cisco exam for working towards the CCNA, it goes into a lot of subnetting. I've already taken and passed that exam, and I walked in and wrote out a chart so that I would not be able to mess this one up. And whenever I sat down, everything was written there, and I have a great chart that I can use, and in 15 seconds, I can answer any subnetting question in the world, even in a test environment. Now, that's the real challenge, is in a test environment, because that's when you get messed up. And I'm the number one person for walking in, being anxious. I'm reading the question, but I'm not comprehending it. I can't hear it in my head. I have to, so these charts really help me out. But if you're somebody who just gets stuck on it, just ignore it, come back to it later. Even if you come back to it on Network Plus, not that big of a deal. Hopefully that helps.
It does. Thank you. And do you plan on doing any CCENT or CCNA training materials in the future, or do you do them now?
I would love, I don't have any now. I would love to do some. I've put together a plan of attack to create some because they're a popular request. And it just would involve.
You really are the greatest teacher online. I would say that for sure.
I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. And I would love to do it because I think it's a fun technology to work with. Cisco doesn't make it easy. If you're not part of the Cisco Academy, you can't really use a lot of the tools that they have available. You'd have to get your own equipment. You'd have to have all of that equipment available and set up in a particular way. You'd have to create some labs. So I've gone through the process, I guess the beginnings of how I would make that work out. From my perspective, it's more of a physics problem. I'm going to finish up the Network Plus and get those videos out shortly. Right after that this year, A Plus needs to be updated, and that's effectively 2 exams. That's 2 exams worth of content. So those are going to have to be updated. Those will be an incremental update, I'm sure, but those have to be done by the end of the year, really the end of summer. So I'd imagine that's on my list of things to do. That will certainly be coming up very quickly. And then there's a big gap because Security Plus got updated last year. A Plus and Network Plus are going to be updated this year. And then there's a lot of time there. That's a perfect opportunity to sit down and do some Cisco videos, I think. And I think that's where I'm leaning right now. I just need to get equipment and set up in my racks and figure out how I want to present it, because it's not something I want to do halfway. I really want to be able to do it the right way. And I think it'd be a lot of fun to do.
Well, I would really love to see that in the future. I really hope that you are able to get to that. I got my Network Plus voucher from your using the code on your website, and I take my test next week. So I just want to thank you so much for all the help that you've provided.
That's great. Let me know how it goes. Send me a note when you're through it and finished. Let me know how that works out for you, Nathan.
I will do. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
There is so much to worry about with these exams. And I literally am that kind of exam taker. I'm that person who goes to the exam. I walk in. I've already got a leveling of anxiety associated with the exam. I mean, I'm not shaking or anything, but it's hard to concentrate when you're in that environment. I go to the same exam center that I always go to, so at least I know what I'm getting into. I know there's going to be bad screens and the mice don't work really well, but it's near my house and it's comfortable for me, so I can sit down and I can really step through. But when I get in, I start the first question, and I try not to do this. I try to sit down, and they give you time before you start the exam to write things out, read the signature. You have to sign a non-disclosure. You have to digitally sign your non-disclosure agreement. But even after that, I hit the start button and the anxiety level goes up and I'm reading the question. What is the best way to blah, 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 blah. Okay, I did not really hear that question. Let me read it again. Which of these methods would be the best way to blah? I'm not really sure what's asking. I know I'm reading words, but I think they're in English. I'm not really comprehending words that are in front of me. So I have to kind of settle it down. So after about 10 minutes, then you're settled down, you're in the groove, the adrenaline's gone, and you can keep going with the exam. I have a big problem with that. So what I end up doing is kind of going through the first questions. I mark them, I flag them. You can flag the questions on, well, the Cisco you can't. The Cisco you can't back up. So the Cisco exams are not like the A+ and the Network Plus and Security Plus. You go through each one, and then you get through them and you either passed or you didn't. You can't cycle back through those pieces. So there is a little bit of more of a challenge with that particular one. You better be in the zone when you sit down for that one. But most of these that I can go back to, I'll flag them and then get through it, settle down. And then when I come back to it, I can read it and respond to it like a proper human being. That's really the biggest challenge I have when taking these certifications. I took one certification exam about a year ago, not even. That was a beta exam. It was 4 hours long because they asked you every single question from the question pool. Holy moly. You sit in a room, and for that one, there was no anxiety at all. It happened to be the one for the company I was working for at the time. It was their exams, our exam. So it was Palo Alto Networks was who I was working for. It was the Palo Alto Network certification exam. So there wasn't a lot of anxiety there because when you're working day to day with the technology, you know it. It's cold. I was really more about logistics. It was in a new place. I had to go to the local community college. It was a different testing system. Actually, a fantastic testing center. It was the best testing center I'd ever been in. Brand new, all new equipment, beautiful screens. The mouses worked. The keyboards were pristine. It was perfect. So that one had no anxiety at all. I just sat down and went through it, but it was 4 hours long. At the end, you're wondering, is this ever going to end? I keep clicking next, and it keeps giving me questions. I got out of it. I had text messages and voicemails from Mrs. Professor Messer, who was like, where are you? What is you've been missing for 4 hours. You're in town. How could you possibly be missing? Is everything okay? She had not called around to the hospitals yet. I caught her just in time. So that was one of those. I said I was going to a beta test. She didn't understand that meant hours of my life were going to be sucked out of me. Not going to be able to work with that at all with those pieces. So this build that I did, by the way, let's change the subject to that. This computer build I did went fantastic. It was the new X99 Haswell chipset. It's just phenomenal. I can't wait to load the operating system and get this thing running. That's what I'm going to do when we're done here. I'm going to take this system over. This will be my daughter's computer, so I'm going to plug it in and do a Windows easy transfer, I hope. Make this very simple for me. And just do a transfer of all of her profiles and all of her settings and get them all on this machine, and we're good to go. She's running Windows 8.1. We'll do an 8.1 transfer. Hopefully that'll work perfect. Get that piece going. I think that's think that's going to be, hopefully that won't take too long. She's got to then load all her applications, but she's got that. I guess most of it's gaming for what she's doing on there. Obviously with that level system, she's doing some gaming. And she's in college and she's making good grades. So I'm going to give her a good gaming system and encourage that. We could have a whole conversation. Yeah, and I am going to record it. Everything's the entire build of the computer took me from about 10 in the morning until about 8 at night. Now, if you've ever built a computer before, it doesn't take that long to build a computer. But in this room, all of these lights, I took all the lights and it's back behind my desk is that second studio. This studio is kind of segmented. There's a separate section back there for doing that kind of thing. So I have the table set up back there. The computer's on it. But you really got to get the camera. I moved the camera. Got to get the camera in just the right place. Got to get the camera, zoomed in the right way. I'm off to the side. I'm like off to the side like this with this, with the thumb screw or the screwdriver. It's hard for me to do it because I don't want to get in the shot. I want to show you what I'm doing on the computer. So it just took a long time to set up the shot, do a take, do a second take. So I don't know how many gigs of video that I need to pour through. So I'm going to, I'm now going to pour through all the video, edit it out, get it in a place where it now looks okay. That'll be the hardest thing, I guess. That's not the screen I wanted to show you. This is the screen I wanted to show you. I want to get the video just right, and then I'll do a voiceover. I'll do sort of the director's commentary of me building the thing. So it's all there. I just need to work on that and get it ready to go. That'll be my next step for getting those pieces together. And then that one will be done. Once I get the operating system installed, it's finished. It's just an install of Windows 8. In fact, I did a Windows Easy Transfer. I think I did it on a study group. I'll have to find it. Where I just did one live in a virtual machine. And we just did it between two VMs. It's so simple to do the Easy Transfer that that's what I'll do for hers as well. And I've got a separate Windows license, so I can easily have both systems up at the same time, transfer everything over, and if there's anything else she needs to have moved, we can easily move it right across the network. I keep saying that I'm going to document the network that I have here because I have 3 separate IDFs, for lack of a better reason, 3 separate closets, 3 separate switches. I've got 4 subnets. I've got some VLAN trunking. I've got a little bit of everything. Got power over Ethernet. There's a lot going on with that. And it took a while to get it exactly the way I wanted because I've got a video monitoring system on the outside, like a security camera system. And the security camera system does a lot of multicast. It does a lot of TCP direct communication. It's got a lot of traffic that it puts on the network. So having those VLANs was incredibly important. Segmenting out the network, incredibly important. Oh, Rob, you said in the chat room you purchased a study guide and like it. And really love it. Let's not discount it. Thank you so much. Really like that. I appreciate that. And for those of you that don't know, every penny of that goes back to keeping this thing going. So I really appreciate that. This is what I do. This is what I do now. I don't have a day job anymore. I quit the day job and now it's this. And so everything you do helps support and keep this thing going. I could not thank you enough for that. Thanks. I think it's a good combination there. I'll make content. If you like the content, you can buy the content. I think that's the way it should be. It really makes sense. One of the things I've looked at, in fact, when I wanted to go to be independent, to not have a separate company that I work for and to be my own publishing company, I kind of looked at other things like Patreon and other pieces. And I don't think that fits for exactly what I'm trying to do. That's kind of the way it works. Yeah, I do have my own, for the network configuration. Rob's asking in the chat room. I am on my own subnet. I have my own corporate ISP connection coming in here. So I have a business class ISP connection coming in here, which effectively is the same as any other ISP connection. I just get better support, and it's actually exceptional support. I get people, as I mentioned, that have shown up on Sunday to replace a cable modem in my facility, which has been awesome. I have a separate internet connection for the rest of the house. So all the kids, the family, the Mrs. Professor Messer, they're on their own subnet. They have really their own subnet is one of the big subnets, and it has its own internet connection. I have my own subnet and my own internet connection. They're actually connected to each other. I just have their route going that way and my route going this way. But if we lost one of those, I could reroute everybody over, or vice versa if I wanted to. I built it that way. And my kids I wouldn't say they don't know enough about routing to get around that. That would be extremely naive of me to even say such a thing. They would figure it out if something wasn't working. So that's one of those ways that I think really helps when you start working with putting these things together and trying to figure out how you do these. Really useful. I do have cable modems on this, and the other two subnets, by the way, a separate subnet that's in the other part of the house, and a separate subnet it's also a VLAN trunked into my studio for the security cameras. They're on their own subnet, and then I have a fourth subnet that is for my audio system, interestingly enough, which uses multicast, which really helps. Very, very useful for that. Everything I do happens to be Comcast here. I'm in Tallahassee, Florida. Comcast is the prevailing ISP, certainly the fastest. It appears that the LEC, the local carrier, it appears that they may be putting fiber in the ground. So this may be changing here in the next year or so. We'll have to see what happens with those pieces. I considered putting in DSL here as well, but it just did not have the throughput I needed for a backup for video. And that's what I need. I need a couple of megabits up to be able to support streaming video. And obviously I'm doing a lot of streaming video these days. I want to do more. I can only do more if I have the infrastructure for it. So right now I have a bit of a single fault there. I need to think about what actually it's not true. I do have a Verizon MiFi LTE option that I have used in my studio, so that if I did lose Comcast, which I have lost Comcast when I'm working, I can pop that up and do very good throughput. I've gotten exceptional throughput on LTE through Verizon on that, on those pieces. So that's one of those. Kevin, we could do an entire series of videos, an entire course on being able to produce content on the internet and be able to monetize that. It's not an easy thing, but it's extremely helpful for what I'm doing here. It's effectively a publishing company. And so that's the more videos I make, the better off things are going to be here. There are, Sean is asking in the chat room, it's like he lives in my house. He said he'd call, but there's a bunch of kids in the background. Are you in my house? What are you doing here? He wants to talk briefly about cheap ways to get continuing education units. That is a good question. CEUs is probably one of the larger questions I get during the week, during the month.
I'm Bob from IT.
Oh no,
I get
no, you're not. You're actually over here, Bob. That's what I get for trying to Google search and talk to you at the same time. Let's go to CompTIA site and look at CEUs. I don't think I did anything with that one. Their continuing education program is just complicated enough to confuse everyone. But if you step through it and you really break it down, it's not so hard. So what they effectively do is they say, you got your exam, you have a certification like A+, you have to get 20 CEUs to renew. Let's just go with that one. You got to get 20 CEUs to renew your A+. Sometime in a 3-year period, you need to accumulate 20 CEUs. There are certain things you can do throughout the year to accumulate these CEUs. Some of them have a cap. For instance, you could not watch a study group every month for the year and get 12 CEUs for that period. In fact, during that 3-year period, you might only be able to get 3 CEUs for watching a study group or a live event. So there's your 20 CEUs. Now you can get CEUs in different ways. The easiest way, in my opinion, the easiest way to upgrade or to renew something like an A+ or Network Plus is you take the next higher exam. If you were to take the Network Plus exam, it will give you enough CEU credits to renew your A+. And what's useful about this, and they say this on this page, and you'll miss it if you don't notice, did you know there are several CompTIA certifications that will either automatically renew or give you CEUs towards your existing certification? Plus, if you plan on taking a higher level CompTIA certification to renew your renewal requirements, no CE maintenance fees are required, period. That's brilliant. That's what you want right there. You want no fees. And that's the way you do it, is you take that higher level exam, you pay nothing. You have to pay for the exam, but you were going to take it anyway, right? You pay nothing additional, and your CompTIAs are renewed. I think that's the best way to do it. That's the easiest way to do it. That's the most economical way to do it. Cost effective anyway, way to do it. And you can see by taking something like a Network Plus, it shows you that it gives you a certain number of CEUs towards these other certifications. And you can see how many are required to renew that cert. That's why I mean that they just complicate everything by putting all these numbers that make no... Why are you putting both of these numbers on the same chart? I don't need to know what it takes to renew this if I'm trying to determine how many it gives me. That's what I mean. It gets complicated unless you read through it and parse it out. I guess I've done it enough now that I can go through that process. The other thing you can do is take certifications from somewhere else. Maybe you want to take a Cisco certification, a Microsoft certification, a VMware certification. There are many other industry certifications you can take that will, for instance, for your A+, you could take Aruba, Checkpoint, Cisco, CompTIA, CWMP, eCouncil, EMC, GIAC, HP, IBM, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Microsoft, Novell, you can take a Novell CNE. How about that? Red Hat, SCP. You can take any of these and they'll give you 20 CEUs. I think all the way down the line, each one of these. Well, this one gives 5. CompTIA Cloud Plus and Mobility Plus give you 5. Everything else gives you 20. But here's the problem. You get the CEUs, but because it's a non-CompTIA certification, you have to pay the monthly maintenance fees to be able to put those certifications in and get renewed. So that's the catch. If you go outside CompTIA, they're going to charge you that monthly maintenance fee to be able to do that. And if you're also, let's say the other option you have is to do different activities. Maybe you don't want to take another certification exam. You're tired of certification exams. You hate certification. You're over it. You don't want any. So one of the things you can do is, here's their qualified activities chart. If you have taken your A+ exam, you pay $25 a year for $75 total. That's your maintenance that you must pay. And then you can do one of these things. You can earn a CompTIA certification, earn a non-CompTIA certification. We talked about that. Complete a certification training course, complete a completely different training course, complete a college course. So some of these things you may be doing anyway. Teach a course, complete, et cetera, et cetera. Attend a live webinar. Here's the live webinar you could take, which would be this one. 2 CEUs. That's instructional materials. Here it is. 1 CEU per hour in a live webinar during a 3-year cycle for A+. Since we're on Network Plus, we'll talk Network Plus. You get 6 CEUs. So you can watch 6 of my live streams in a 3-year period and get those 6 hours. You can't watch more than 6. You can't watch 7 and get 7 hours. It cuts you off at 6. So you need 30 for your Network Plus. You can at least get 6 by watching one of these. And you can do all these other things too. And I think it's a very easy way. I think if you're work experience, attend a conference, you're doing these things anyway. Going to training classes, publish a book. Those are things you may be doing. You just pay your annual maintenance fees. You send in this information to CompTIA and they renew you. You don't have to take any test ever again. And of course, it doesn't say this, but you could just take the test again. If there is a newer version of the exam, you take that. You can't take the same exam again. You have to take the newer version of the exam to renew it. But you could also take the newer version of the exam and renew. So that's another thing you could do. So that's a lot, isn't it? That's just a mess of things to go through with those. But I think once you parse it out and you go through it and you understand more of exactly what's being asked of you when you're doing this, I think that's it. Now, if you're outside of the 3-year renewal, well, after 3 years, your certification expires. You're good. You're no good anymore. You'd have to take the exam again to get the certification again. So you don't want your certifications to expire, because then you really don't have a choice. You have to take the certification exam again. There's nothing to do. Now, the question in the chat, can I watch the archived sessions? Now, this says attend a live webinar. Well, I mean, it is a live webinar, and you are attending it, even if it's a recorded live webinar. This webinar was recorded in front of a live studio audience. So you could I don't know. I don't know if watching the replay of this qualifies. I would think that it would, especially since you're sending me the certification information, verifying that you did watch it. I send you back a digital certificate that says, yeah, you watched this, and you're good to go. So I think that's where they say you submit the, let's scroll down here, description of the content, completion certificate that has the name of the webinar, the name of the certified professional, I guess that would be you, the date of the webinar, the date the webinar was attended, and the number of hours. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Here we go. They finally added this to the list. Pre-recorded webinars, webcasts, podcasts, or YouTube videos are not valid unless certified professionals can provide proof of registration or completion certificates, which I provide. So that's very clear. So if you watch a replay of it and you send the registration information to me, you send back the secret word, I will send you the digital certificate and you're good to go. So there we go. I went all the way around the barn there just to get back to the conversation we were just having. Yeah, so there's 6. Got 6 of them covered. Although just take the next exam. Why wouldn't you want to get your Security Plus or one of the Cisco exams? You just have to pay the maintenance fees. So that's good. I don't need more coffee. I need coffee. This is not coffee. This is a warm beverage, but it is not coffee. Warm beverage becomes awfully important when you're talking for 2 hours straight. Certainly helps when you have something there anyway. So that kind of covers it. I think that was, we got through quite a bit of content today. I think that's the next step for me is to do an operating system install. I have study guides, or I guess now they're going to be course notes. I'm going to call them that because I think that better describes what they are course notes. So I have my course notes I'm working on. I'll give you a sneak peek. Since you were nice enough to stay this long, I'll give you a sneak peek of the latest course notes, and you can see exactly what they look like. I might even have one that's already a PDF that's already ready to go, and I'll have to bring up the whole system so you can see exactly what's going on. I'll find it here, killing time, blah, blah, blah. Here it is, course notes. And did I make one? Nope, this is the latest. This is certainly, so this is real. There are indeed course notes here. Here they are. So here's the N10006 course notes, and they're beautiful. They're gorgeous. I put them in a different format than the last. Obviously, a lot of the content very similar because not much changed. Some of the all the graphics were updated in a lot of these, and I added more tables and more information for these. A lot more detail. Pulled open my camera again, start taking more pictures. So a lot of the diagrams are new, and this is only the first 5 pages. There are many, many, many more pages to go, and so almost everything was updated inside of this. There's much more to do here, so that should give you a little sneak preview into what I'm doing this weekend. Plenty of those to get going. I think that covers the bulk of what I wanted to do today. At least gave you a feel for some of the things that's happening around here. A lot of excitement. Got a lot of things going on. I could not be happier with the way things are turning out. Thanks to you. I appreciate your support and being able to do those things. It's kind of nice to be able to set a goal for doing those pieces, put together everything, and by gosh, it even worked, which is even better. So, but thanks for joining us today. We've got another set of study groups planned for next month. We'll have the A+ and the Network Plus, and some folks are taking my arm and pulling my arm around because they want more live content. So I think I may be producing more live content here very soon to be able to do that. But that's one of those things that I'll fit into the big mix as soon as I can can figure out those pieces. There's a little bit more of it's a physics problem. Like I said earlier, it's just about finding enough time in the day to make all of those things happen. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. Remember, we'll do another one of these next month. But be sure to check the calendar on Professor Messer website for the next study group, and we'll see you then on the next Network Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.